All right, so what we're going to talk about tonight is, what did God have against Judah and Israel? Because remember, Jeremiah was called by God to preach, prophesy against Judah and Israel because of their evil ways. So we're going to look at chapter 7 tonight. It portrays the everything that God has against Judah and Israel. But remember, all the entire book of Judah is about Jeremiah getting the word from God, and then telling the kings and the people of Judah to get back to God. And all the different oracles just are different ways that God has told Jeremiah, trying to get his people back. So we're going to just look at chapter 7 tonight, and then we're going to cover some of the subjects, some of the main reasons what God did have against Judah and Israel. So we'll start with Jeremiah 7, 1 through 7. The word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, stand in the gate of the Lord's house and proclaim there this word, and say, hear the word of the Lord. All the house of Judah who enter in these gates to worship the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, amend your ways and your doings, and I will cause you to dwell in this place. Do not trust in the lying words of those who say to you, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. For if you amend your ways and your doings, you are the temple of the Lord. If you execute justice between a man and his neighbor, if you do not defraud and oppress the strangers, the fatherless, and the widows, and do not shed innocent blood in this country, neither walk after other gods to your hurt, then I will cause you to dwell in this country, in the land that I gave to your fathers forever and ever. Okay, that's the main message, telling them to amend their ways. And this is a positive message. It says, okay, but it also is what they have against, what God has against Judah and Israel, oppressing the strangers, not taking care of the fatherless and the widows, not shedding innocent blood. These are things, and that's just a general picture of what God was talking about, and what Jeremiah had to preach and tell the people of Judah and Israel. All right, and now we'll go to 8 through 11. Behold, you trust in lying words that cannot profit. And this, he's talking to all the people of Judah. Indeed, you are thieves, you are murderers, and you commit adultery, and swear falsely, and burn incense to Baal, and walk after other gods whom you know not. And then you come and stand before me in this house, which is called by my name, and say, deliver us. And yet you do all these evils. And this house, which is called by my name, become a den of robbers in your eyes? Behold, even I have seen it, says the Lord. Okay. Now, that last verse it's called by many, has become a den of robbers in your eyes. Okay, now we have talked about all the time that Jesus taught from the Torah, and his teachings came from his study of the Torah and his understanding. And of course, he came to deliver a new message, a new covenant, which we're going to cover next week or the following week. Okay, so what we have here, and I wanted to put this in here because for a better understanding, if we go then to Mark 11:17, this is Jesus now. Jesus is talking, and he taught them, saying, "Is it not written, my house shall be called the house of prayer for all the peoples, but you have made it a bandit's cave." So the awareness, and actually, if we were to go through all the prophets, you find the same message. The temple, the world, the people have become corrupt. And so Jesus, of course, picked that up. And when Jesus was teaching, Jesus talked about the same thing from having studied Jeremiah. Okay, now I've done a lot here on three different subjects, but I just thought it was significant so that so that we get an understanding of some of this stuff that's talked about throughout the Bible. So the very at the heart and core of everything that God had against Judah and Israel is the worship of other gods. And because remember, from Abraham, that was the one God. And all through the Old Testament, it was the one God, the God of Abraham, so to speak, the one God, and the people. And he established Abraham's children, the 12 tribes. He established these people. These people were to be the emissaries for God and show the rest of the world about the one God and his commandments and way of living. That was the original covenant. That's what the Hebrews, and in this case the Israelites and Judah, that is what they were supposed to do. Of course, a lot happened since Abraham's time, but let's look at worshiping other gods, because you have to remember the world from Abraham's time even up through Jesus' time. The world had pagan gods, pagan religions. So at this point in time, okay, this was just another god. Astera, Venus, was originally a Babylonian goddess. In mythology, it is said that she fled from heaven and settled at Ephesus. Later on, she was called Diana of Ephesus. And of course, the name Esther is derived from Astera. Venus is a beautiful star and was worshipped by many people. All right, now, when the Israelites turned from their religion, they adopted many pagan gods and goddesses. They offered incense and wine to them. The people turned to these gods because they were oppressed by their enemies who surrounded them. In addition to this, the pagans had better lands and abundant water, whereas Judah and Israel suffered from long droughts and famine. And I got more about this too. But a little bit about why they would turn from the one God. And remember, the belief system back then was that God caused everything. And in this Jeremiah the prophet and all the prophets, you see God saying, I'm going to do this, and I'm, being a wrathful God. That was the belief system. God did good, but God was responsible for everything. So, okay, now we'll have some more on this when we get to Baal. All right, so that was one of the main problems, is that they would go after other gods. Now, the religion of Baal, and you find it throughout it was the main problem that the people had, and that God was talking about. They went after Baal, and there's many other related things, as you will see here. So Baal worship was older than the Hebrew religion, and many of the Israelites were still idolatrous in their concept of deity. Many of them believed that there were other gods besides their God, and at times they forsook their God and religion and participated in idol worship. Now, the big thing about Baal, and it got people in trouble all the time, is, let's jump down here first. Baal was the fertility god. Now, if you think about this, it's going to infer some other things. And you jump back up here. Sexual intercourse was part of the ritual when worshiping Baal. Okay, and a little footnote here too about Baal and some of the other gods. The Israelites not only worshiped pagan gods, but they also burned their sons and daughters as offerings to them. The Valley of Hinnom is in Jerusalem, and it was used to burn rubbish, and also that's where they would sacrifice their children. Now, you will remember from Abraham, and Abraham's sacrificing Isaac. One of the main lesson that came out of that story to Abraham was that there was to be no more human sacrifice. So that had been established way back in Abraham's times, but as we all know, after numerous years and centuries, things do erode, and people will backslide. Okay. Now, a little more about Baal. Don't want to, but I just thought it was good to know. Baal means Lord, husband, or a kind of deity concerned with husbandry or agriculture. In other words, Baal was the god of fertility. Baal or Baala was generally worshipped in fertile regions, such as Damascus and Lebanon, where the soil was rich and water was abundant. There is a great contrast between fertile Lebanon and the poor and dry Judean hills. Now, before I read anything else, I just want to verify this personally. When I went to Israel, that is in the southern part, which is, we're talking about Judah, Jerusalem, and well, Bethlehem is down further. We're talking about stones and sand, basically, and it was Well, Martin had a story he liked to tell. It was his story too. And that was, Moses never entered the promised land. He got there, but he was not allowed to enter the promised land, and he actually died. He saw it from afar, but he died. And so when I returned from Israel, I had lots and lots of pictures of sand and dirt and rocks and stuff. So Martin always told the story that it was no wonder that Moses died when he saw the promised land, because all he saw was sand and rocks. And so that was his story, and he told it and many people laughed. And I believe, honestly, I believe that that's true. And my belief is that the promised land should have been Galilee, because in Galilee, in the north, that area is tropical, is subtropical, and it is beautiful. So anyway, I don't know. For Moses. Okay, so in addition to this, the worship of Baal was sensual. People ate, drank, and engaged in harlotry in the temples of Baal. The Israelites, this is just really cool, having poor soil and scanty water, often were lured by the sensual Baal worship. Time and again, they fell victim to it. Baal worship was common in biblical lands. Its altars, temples, and shrines were built on high places, and there people worshiped the god of nature, which they thought had provided them with material things. So that's the background. That's why the people did it. Well, there's some contrast that we maybe can talk about a little later today, but that's the story behind that. Okay. Now on to 7:12 to 13. Okay. Therefore, go now to my place, which was in Shiloh, where I set my name at the first, and see what I did to it for the wickedness of my people Israel. And now, because you have done all these works, says the Lord, and I warned you in advance and spoke to you, but you did not listen. And I called you, but you did not answer. Therefore, I will do to this house, which is called by my name, in which you trust, and to this city, which I gave to you and to your fathers, as I have done to Shiloh. And I will cast you out of my sight, as I have cast out all your brethren, even all the descendants of Ephraim. Therefore, this is really strong. Therefore, do not pray for this people, neither supplicate for them, nor make intercession to me, for I will not hear you. So this is just one of the messages God gave to Jeremiah to try and get the people to listen, to come back to God. Okay. Now, you heard him just talk about he would do to them what he did to Shiloh. Basically, Shiloh was a place way back in the Old Testament for this, and it was the first place. It was before Jerusalem was ever built, and it was the first place where the Ark of the Covenant resided. And at that time, the Philistines were in power, and the Philistines just destroyed Shiloh and stole the Ark of the Covenant. So God was just saying, these people knew about Shiloh because they knew about the Bible, and it was in the Old Testament before. And so he was saying, look, that's what's gonna happen to you. And the other thing, and I mentioned this one more time, but I'm going to do it one more time. Okay. Clearly it says that God is, God was going to do this, and God did this, and God did that. Okay. It was the belief system of the time. And so just right here in this instance, okay, uh, what happened in Shiloh is that the Philistines captured Shiloh and destroyed it, and so they believed that it was God who caused the Philistines to destroy Shiloh, but it wasn't God come down and okay, boom. No, the Philistines destroyed Shiloh. And one of the things about when they battled in the Old Testament in those days, they literally destroyed everything, cattle, land, buildings, whatever. And as you'll see, many times they took the people captive. They didn't kill people, but they would take them captive. So that's what that Shiloh thing is all about. And now we come to a favorite subject. I think that's iPhone George there. Okay, sacrifices. Now, I'm going to do just a little more on sacrifices, but let's read this first. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, add your burnt offerings to your sacrifices and eat meat, which I did not command your fathers to eat. Neither did I command them concerning either burnt offerings or sacrifices in the day when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. But this thing I commanded them, saying, obey my voice, and I will be your God, and you shall be my people, and walk in all the ways that I have commanded you, that it may be well with you. But here we go again. But they did not listen, nor incline their ear to hear. But they walked in their own counsels and in the imagination of their evil heart, and went backward and not forward. Okay, now this is one of the places, and this is the Old Testament, which makes it interesting. God never commanded, to this day, he never commanded people to offer sacrifices or burnt offerings. He never authorized that. But so where'd they come from? They came from the pagan religions. That is what surrounded Abraham, and that was what it was then. And pagan religions offered burnt offerings. They had all kinds of rituals and sacrifices, but throughout the prophets, you can find in most all the prophets, they'll say the same thing: no burnt offerings or no sacrifices. That's not my concern. That is not what I want. And we go to Jeremiah 6:20, and again he says, to what purpose do you bring me incense from Sheba and the cane of sweet incense from a far country? Okay, and of course he's referring to, remember, the Queen of Sheba came to see Solomon and brought all these sweet incenses and whatnot. But again, he says, your burnt offerings are not acceptable to me, nor do your sacrifices please me. But this never, I mean, but even up to the time of Jesus, they still didn't hear him, because they were still doing sacrifices and burnt offerings in Jesus' time. So once again, let's go. We go to Jesus and the Gospels, and clearly, all right. I mean, we're talking, I think, probably at least 400, 600 years later, and Jesus comes along and he says, go and learn what this means. I want mercy and not sacrifice. And remember, in Jesus' time, the temple was still there. They were still doing their they were still roasting their whatever, their meat or whatever, and they were sacrificing. So they were still doing it in Jesus' time, but Jesus said, I want mercy and not sacrifice. And so, and then we go to Mark, and that a man should love him with all the heart and with all the mind, with all the soul, and with all the might, and love his neighbor as himself. This is far more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices. And so really wanted to emphasize this, though it's coming from Jeremiah. It would, and if we were to read Isaiah and many of the other prophets, it's there, but it never went away. Okay.
Busy.
Now, according to Jeremiah, good and honorable deeds with beneficial actions were God's concerns for the people. Ritualism was second place, along with its animal sacrifices. God had never commanded these kinds of sacrifices for true worship. Proper behavior and benevolent actions toward others were important for sincere and genuine worship. Animal sacrifices were long practiced by all Near Eastern tribal peoples before Moses institutionalized them with the specific laws and ordinance for Israel. But God never actually commanded such. Okay? Jeremiah is speaking in the stead of God when he tells the people that God did not bring their forefathers out of Egypt just to have sacrifices and offerings brought to him while they were in the desert. They were to learn to do good, seek justice, protect the oppressed, plead for the fatherless and the widows. God desired mercy, compassion, and a genuine practice of justice for the nation. They were to be an example for all nations to see the divine laws protecting and guiding people and learn the true ways of governing a people. Okay, now when I read this, I feel like I'm reading the Gospels, and they're so parallel. Okay, now, okay, and they talk about, and Jeremiah talks about false prophets. Okay, and hopefully this will give you an idea of what the false prophets, who they were and what they were all about. Okay, Judah was led astray by false prophets who predicted a brighter future and assured the people that they would never see the sword. The rebellious people had built altars on high places and sacrificed their children to the idols. And despite the warnings of God's prophets against foreign alliances, the kings of Judah, their princes, and false prophets who acted as their advisors made alliances with pagan nations. They refused to trust in the God of their fathers and to heed the admonitions of his holy prophets like Jeremiah, who sought their good. And so that was one of the other things that Jeremiah kept warning them, that Babylon was a major power, and Jeremiah kept warning the people. I mean, it came from God, warning them that instead of holding out as a major national, we're strong. We're gonna be able to fight these people, and we're gonna do alliance with Egypt and whatnot. But the warning that Jeremiah got from God was, look, Babylon is going to conquer everything and everybody. So you would be better off to ally yourself with them, or at least don't resist. Because had you done that, and if you did that, then you would not be, they may not have destroyed Jerusalem and whatnot, and you would not have been, they would not have been captured and taken away. Because the majority of people, when Babylon finally conquered, the majority of people were taken captives and totally removed from Judah and Jerusalem. So that's another thing about the false prophets. And we have another another verse here these are two comparable verses from the Gospels and Jeremiah, and they parallel each other, and that's what Jesus taught. So Matthew, Jesus answered, saying to them, be careful that no man deceives you. For many will come in my name and say, I am the Christ, and they will deceive many. And so he was talking about this, what Jeremiah had said here. Then the Lord said, the prophets prophesy lies in my name. For I did not send them, neither have I commanded them, nor spoken to them. They prophesy to you false visions, oracles, and divinations, and the deceit of their hearts. So what happened is, ordinarily the kings had prophets of God that advised them. Well, in Jeremiah's time, prophets of God had kind of backslided and fallen into evil ways, and they were still prophesying the king. And poor Jeremiah, remember Jeremiah was only 24. Poor Jeremiah is there trying to tell, everybody and whatnot, hey, this is, that they're not telling you. They're telling you everything is well, and there's going to be peace and whatnot. And my message from God is, no, Babylon is coming, and it will be better for you to not resist them and whatever. Okay. So, and a little more about false prophets. The princes, judges, and false prophets started the day early. This is really great, but this is for real. It came from the commentary. Okay. Started the day early by eating and drinking. When they sat in councils, the prophets were so drunk they could not see or interpret visions. The priests were out of their way because of excessive drinking, behaving shamefully. The drunken judges also erred in judgment and perverted justice. Excessive eating and drinking were responsible for the downfall of Israel and have caused many other nations to stumble and fall. At times, even the priests overindulged. That's food for thought. Okay. Israel had forsaken the way of God. The priests, false prophets, leaders, and judges were calling evil good and good evil. Drunkenness and injustices prevailed in the land, which, according to the prophet, made God angry at the people. Okay. So, I hope that gives you a picture of what Jeremiah's prophecies, actually all the prophecies were very much the same, trying to bring the people back to God. And hold on just a minute. Okay, I'm not ready for that yet. Okay, so I took this verse from Jeremiah 22, and I thought that now um, I'm going to just kind of I label this food for thought, and when I keep reading Jeremiah and whatnot, I keep seeing parallels to our world today. So I took these two verses. I'm going to read them, and then I'm gonna just open it up and see if you guys have any thoughts about how this might parable and how this might help us understand today maybe what's going on and maybe what we need to do. So he did justice. We're to do justice to the cause of the poor and needy, and he did well. He who does these things knows me, says the Lord. But your eyes and your hearts are set for nothing else but for your wealth and for the shedding of innocent blood and for oppression and for violence. Okay, think about that for a minute. I'm going to just do the thank you for your contributions.